Hello. So in this video, I'm going to discuss what logic is about. And what logic is about is a certain kind of good reasoning. What kind of good reasoning? Well, let's look at some good and bad arguments. So consider this argument. The Earth is a sphere, so Trump is president. So that claim number one is the premise, and claim number two is the conclusion. Is the claim number one the premise? Is it a good reason to believe the conclusion? No. The claim number one is true, and claim number two is true, but there's no connection between them. Similarly, if I say Cygnus is a swan, and I reason to the conclusion, Cygnus is purple, well, who knows? Certainly that doesn't seem like maybe Cygnus is a swan, and maybe Cygnus is also purple, but is there any connection between the two? Well, there's no stated connection there. But now suppose you were in an airport, and you were just minding your own business, and then you heard a woman say, "If you kiss me nicely, I'll marry you." And you go, "Well, what?" And you turned around, and you saw a man lean over and kiss her nicely, and you might conclude, aha, she is going to marry him. So that would be good reasoning. The first claim is, if he kisses her nicely, she is going to marry him. The second claim is, he is kissing her nicely. And the conclusion is, so, she is going to marry him. And there is a good, strong connection between the premises of that argument, claims 1 and 2, and the conclusion of that argument, claim 3. Or, another simple example, if Sally is going, Quincy is going, and Sally is going, so Quincy is going. And this, too, is a good argument. There's a good, strong connection between the premises of the argument and the conclusion of the argument. And in logic, we study this kind of argument. We say that this kind of argument is a valid argument. So what do we mean by valid? Well, or the property of validity. In valid reasoning is like this. No matter what, if the premises are true, so is the conclusion. And it seems like in those two arguments, yes, that holds. And we can put that differently. We can say that it's impossible for the premises to be true while the conclusion is false. So there's no situation in which the premises are true and while the conclusion is false in that situation. Okay, so both of these arguments look valid. The first argument, if the premises are true, so if he kisses her nicely, she is going to marry him, and he is kissing her nicely. If those are true, then the conclusion is also true. No matter what, in any situation in which those are true, so is the conclusion. And there's no situation, it's impossible for the premises to be true and the conclusion to be false. Try imagining such a situation. Can you? I guarantee you that you cannot. You cannot imagine any such situation. And the same is true of the second argument. So these are valid because there's this strong connection between the premises and the conclusion. Now, are the premises true? Well, I mean, you looked over and you heard this woman say this thing, and then you saw the man kiss the woman, and so you might think they're true, but they might not be. I mean, maybe you didn't hear what she said correctly, or maybe it looked like a nice kiss, but it wasn't a nice kiss, or maybe she wasn't speaking sincerely. Maybe this is a joke they have, and they're never going to get married, or who knows what. You don't know. You can't, well, you can know, but maybe the premises are true, maybe they're not. You have good evidence for them in that situation, but still, they might not be true. So maybe you didn't hear and see correctly, for example. But in logic and in reasoning, we're not interested in the actual truth of the premises. We're interested in the connections between the claims. We're interested in, does the conclusion follow from the premises? Are the premises true? That's a separate question. And we're interested in the connection. In this class and in logic, we're interested in the connections between claims. So that's what we'll be focusing on. And these are important connections. Suppose that you were sitting watching TV and you, why you would be watching TV now, I don't know, but suppose you were, and the lottery announcement comes up, and the announcer says, numbers 7, 12, 24, 33, 42, 52 have won the lottery, and it's an $8 million lottery. And so you think to yourself, well, if I have those numbers, then I have just won myself $8 million. And you look down, there's your lottery ticket you're holding, and you see, oh, indeed, I do have numbers 7, 12, 24, 33, 42, 52. Well, have you won the lottery? Well, have you won yourself $8 million? If you can recognize validity, you can conclude that you have. But if you can't recognize validity, you wouldn't be able to conclude that you had. So that being able to recognize these connections between claims is super important. In some cases, it's also super obvious. That's because we're good at reasoning logically in lots of situations. So it might seem trivial, but actually, it's really important. It's just that also we're sometimes really good at recognizing when these connections hold. And it'd be really weird if we weren't able to recognize them. Now, the world is complicated, as I think you know by now, and we can think and reason about almost all of it. Certainly any part that you encounter, you've been able to think about and you've been able to reason about. And you might think that would make logical reasoning really complicated. And some reasoning is really complicated. But logical reasoning, as it turns out, the reasoning that involves validity, is really simple. It turns on just some basic concepts, our understanding of and, if, and not, and or. And if you understand those concepts, you can do a huge amount of logical reasoning. And you do understand those concepts. And that makes a lot of logical reasoning really simple, because it involves just these concepts. So there's this simple logical reasoning that we do all the time. And these reasoning abilities we have to reason logically are very basic. They're very fundamental to our ways of getting around in the world. Young children have them. We have them a lot of the time. Sometimes we don't pay attention, we make mistakes, but we're really good at simple logical reasoning when we pay attention. The lottery guy wouldn't, or if that was you, looking at the ticket and wasn't able to reason, would lack those abilities, and that'd be really weird. And that the fact that it seems so weird shows how fundamental they are. It's when it's missing, something very weird has happened. Something very basic is gone. Even lots of animals, maybe squirrels, can reason logically. Dog runs down a road, it's following sniffing a trail, and it comes to a fork in the road, and it sniffs one way, and it doesn't pick up the scent, and it immediately runs off the other way without even checking to see, to smell the other way. That would be an example of the dog logical reasoning. It thinks the person I'm hunting went this way or that way, the person didn't go that way, so the person went that way. So there's logical reasoning all over. Thinking about logic is a little trickier, though. Not everyone can do it. Squirrels can't think about logic as far as we know. Young children probably aren't very good at thinking about logic. They probably can't do it. We can. And that's what we'll be doing in this course. And what that means we're doing is we're just becoming more aware of what we already do. We already reason pretty well a lot of the time. Sometimes we make mistakes, but mostly we do a good job when we're paying attention. So we're just becoming more aware of that and reflecting on these things that we already do. And that means it's actually, in some ways, very simple. It's just a matter of paying attention to what we're already doing. Now, and so it's just focusing on the basic concepts and getting clear about them. A lot of the time, this reasoning is so basic and so fundamental that we don't pay attention to it. It just slips by, we don't notice it. So a lot of what we're going to be doing, and because it's so easy for us most of the time, is we are going to focus on those basic concepts and get clear about them and how they work. So that means there's nothing magical or mysterious or in some ways deep that you have to understand in order to do this. If something doesn't make sense, it doesn't mean there's some sort of mysterious thing that you're not getting. It means probably one of two things has happened. Either I didn't explain the concept very well, or you didn't focus clearly enough on what was being said, and you want to just focus a little more clearly. It's not a big, like, oh, I can't get this, and just pay attention a little more to exactly what is being said. And this is just a matter of developing these skills that we have. The skills that we have that squirrels don't. The skills that we have in particular to think about our own reasoning. So that's what we're going to be doing in this course. I'm looking forward to it, and we'll be getting into that as the course proceeds.